Hello and welcome to Walk You to Urithiru. This is part 6 of my Oathbringer preview analysis. We have got chapters 10, 11 and 12 this week, though I will only be covering chapter 10 in this episode because it's been quite a heavy week. All three of the chapters that we've got are extremely long. To put it into a little bit of perspective, I normally have my reread with analysis and recording done by Wednesday. It's now Thursday morning and I've only just started recording this section because chapters 11 and 12 have quite a lot in them. Anyway, let's jump straight in. I am going to get the epigraphs for chapters 10 and 12 and stick them together. We don't have one for 11 because it's a flashback. So, and I quote, "Perhaps my heresy stretches back to those days of my childhood, where these ideas began. I ask not that you forgive me, nor that you understand." End quote. Now, I haven't actually spoken much about the actual content of these epigraphs. More I've just spoken about who may have read them, the hints that they've given towards what's going to come in the future. But the actual content themselves, it seems a bit lacking, and what I want to understand is why they write, "I ask not that you forgive me, nor that you understand." Now, what is the point in writing a book if not to allow someone to understand your point of view? I mean, it could just be a recounting of events that led up to whatever it is that the author did, because they clearly think they did something horrible, and if that's so, it just seems a lot more of a thoughtful piece than it does seem just a recounting of events. If it's just a recounting of events, it doesn't seem to lead to this quite flowery and, verbose preface. It could just be like, here's what happened. I mean, I don't know, I'm struggling to understand what the content of this preface will tell us once we find out who, because I assume by the end of part 1 we'll know who wrote the Oathbringer. And other than telling us, someone dies and then survives, or someone doesn't die and then survive, I'm not sure what it's actually going to tell us, but Brandon wouldn't have just picked it for no reason. I'm sure we will find out something interesting. So, moving on to chapter 10, called Distractions. This is another Kaladin chapter, and we're jumping straight into him searching for the Voidbringers. He's working his way out of Hearthstone. He's kind of going in a spiral outwards from Hearthstone and searching all the towns and villages because he doesn't know what direction they went. And so searching in a spiral makes a lot of sense. We get a little mention of Gumfrems, which are a Chull-like beasts which have Heliodor gem hearts, which then are harvested for their ability to soulcast into meat. So it's like Chulls provide, work and meat, and then you have these other cattle who are Gumfrems who provide soulcasting abilities into meat. So it's like two different ways of producing meat. It's a cool little system. It's also nice to get confirmation that things other than Great Shells and Listeners have gem hearts. One of the common theories of Roshar is that pretty much everything native to Roshar has a gem heart. And this allows them to do things with Spren and have a unique relationship with Spren that most things can't have. Syl and Kaladin have a little chat about Spren and their children, and Syl talks about how the Stormfather shaped them, how he helped some of them grow, how he did create. She did say they created some of them, and this talks about how she might be able to do this with other Spren. And I'm wondering if this is another little point of separation between True Spren and Sub Spren. I know this could just be the True Spren being assholes about how they think they're superior, but this does actually seem to be some divide in intelligence and capability between certain Spren. And I'm wondering if this is a conversation they have about Syl saying she's going to raise them to fly around and annoy Kaladin, whether that's kind of a little bit of a hint at the Honor Spren's ability to get Wind Spren and kind of convert them into Honor Spren by teaching them certain things, and whether this is true for all Sub Spren and all True Spren, or is this just Syl being silly? So Cal finds a large town, and before he arrives, he turns Syl into a Shardblade, and he actually calls her a Sealblade, which is quite nice to hear him say, because it's a good name. She's Steelblade. He turns up and he describes her as a large Shardblade with the Windrunner symbol on the hilt, and I find this interesting that Kaladin's is so much more ornate than both Shallan's and later in this chapter we find out Renarin's got one, but both of theirs are not described as anything special. Both of them are described as quite plain. In fact, Shallan's isn't described at all, so it might be really complicated, but it's mostly just described as a Shardblade. And so the fact that Syl gets turned into a Windrunner blade with the Windrunner symbol, and if you look at the symbols of they do look like that. So I guess that just means Kaladin is just super Windrunnery and Shallan and Renarin are just filthy casuals. He turns up to the town, he finds a large town, and he puts on a menagerie act before being told that the Voidbringers actually did attack this town. And so he immediately, stuff's to find out about that. The person who informs Cal about the attack is an Ardent who very clearly has a crush on him, as Syl says, and so she's going on the list just in case. Now, there's about a group of 50 Voidbringers attacked the town, and they took nothing but grain. And a handful of soldiers fought them off, and Cal finds this extremely strange, and I'm sure everyone else finds this extremely strange. That group of 5 soldiers with basically cudgels, which is like a bit of wood, like just a club, managed to fight off, a bunch of Voidbringers. And this is very strange because we've seen what they can do when they're in groups together. My theory on this is that the Voidbringers are almost under the complete control of either an Unmade or Odium himself. And he's essentially commanded them, gather here, gather in X place, bring, whatever resources you can, bring grain, bring food. We need everyone we can, so don't get tied down in pointless battles. Just a general kind of call to arms, raiding kind of thing, and he knows he's going to need, or whoever is in control of these Voidbringers knows they're going to need every single soldier possible, because they want this to be the last desolation. They want this to, I assume Odium wants to win this time. And so he is like, don't risk anyone at stupid little battles in stupid little towns, just gather resources, gather men, gather troops, just gather everything you can. And so that's my theory on why they didn't attack and why they just ran off after they got attacked by a few people. The Ardent then also mentions how the soldiers did report red lights within the group of Voidbringers, but what they said is that it doesn't seem like they were the eyes. There wasn't enough of them to be eyes, there was only a few of them, and one of the soldiers even got all up in the face of one of the Voidbringers and didn't say anything about glowing red eyes. Now, I have a feeling that the fact there's a few red lights, but not the eyes, makes me feel like they're not in storm form, because they have glowing red eyes, and they're also not in war form. And the reason I think they're not in war form is when Ashonai got turned into storm form in her interlude, she talked about how there was a little comet spren flitting around her head, kind of just annoying her. And I have a feeling these are the red lights that the soldiers saw, is these little comet spren, who I have a feeling only appear when the listeners take a form of Odium. They take upon them a spren of Odium and take on a form, like storm form and storm spren. Obviously there's a bit of Odium's influence on that. And I feel like that little comet spren, that little comet, is, I don't know, maybe someone looking out for them, making sure that they're obeying. I don't know what the comet spren is, but I have a feeling that it's something that's going to be a common occurrence between listener forms that obey Odium. And so yeah, I feel like they're not in storm form, they're not in war form, but they are in a form of Odium. I don't know what form, but I'm sure we'll find out soon. After finding out this information, Syl and Kaladin have a little chat after this about Kaladin's sex life and about how Syl likes to watch people. Kaladin wonders what it is exactly that these spren of Radiants get up to whilst their Radiants are having sex, because you have essentially this little person following you around, and it's like, what do you do when I need a little bit of alone time? I do hope we get an answer to this, because I find it kind of interesting, because it's just a strange situation for everyone involved. After this, we then find out where the Parshendi are going.
If there is some sort of call to action for the Voidbringers to move west. It's moving west. Right, we're going to move west, and they moved west. I might be completely wrong on that.
I'm still pretty confident in my theory that they're moving west. They're going to Kholinar, which is both east of Hearthstone and east of Kharbranth. So I was completely wrong with my guess there, but this definitely confirms for me that Kholinar is super fucked, because it's, like I said before, it's got a mad queen, it's got riots in the street, it's got a huge amount of Parshmen that will be there that have been transformed into Voidbringers, and now it seems every damn Voidbringer in Alethkar is now heading to Kholinar, and now I'm extremely worried, not just for Elhokar's wife, but his child as well, because I don't know if people remember, but Elhokar actually has a son, and so I'm extremely worried for these people. We then switch to Adolin's point of view, and we have Adolin hanging out with Gallant after losing Shoreblood in the fight with the Voidbringers. Rhaenyra joins Adolin after a short time, and they have a little conversation about how Rhaenyra makes the observation that Rashadiums have stone hooves, and I found this interesting because not all horses have stone hooves, which makes me think, did Rashadiums come to Roshar a long time before this current crop of humans, or did they come with the rest of the horses and would change when the shards arrived, maybe. Or it does seem like there has been a few exoduses, a few generations of movements onto Roshar, because we've got people like the Unkalaki and Lopen's people, who seem to have bred with the listeners and have listener blood in them, and that's why they've kind of got the stone fingernails, and there's people with blue veins visible, but then you have other people like the Alethi who just don't seem to have any sort of weird Rosharan attributes. So to me, I'm thinking that there's not just been one mass exodus onto Roshar which brought humans and people. I have a feeling there's multiple generations of both horses and people, or one of them a very long time ago, whether that was just horses or horses and people as well. Not sure, but the fact, I've never really thought about the fact that Roshadiums and normal horses exist as two separate species, and one of them seems to be much more adapted to Rosharan life than the other. Or it could be completely wrong, and when the shards arrive, they just mess with a bunch of stuff. Who knows? Renarin also makes a little comment about how horses, normal horses that is, don't seem to fit on Roshar. And he's a clever lad, he is. He's very observant when he knows what to look, when he's looking for something. And I do feel like Renarin might work something out about people and Roshar and about their nativeness. We'll have to wait and see. That boy is very clever. Renarin tries to give the shard blade that Adolin won in the duels back to him, and Adolin realises that Renarin must have his own blade now, which Renarin then summons, and as I said before, it's not a very complicated one. It sounds like curvy and long-bladed, but it doesn't seem to have much of a hilt or a very simple kind of unadorned blade, which still sounds cool as fuck because the shard blades. Any shard blade is cool. Renarin has a little moment where he talks about how he's struggling to fit in, and he just gets used to Bridge 4 and now he's not. And Renarin is just the most adorable little guy. I mean, poor dude. It's just... We then see Renarin heal Adolin's wrist, but he doesn't do it in the kind of the normal way that... Something else happens whilst he does it. And I'm just going to read the quote to you. "A pulse of radiance washed through Adolin, and for an instant he saw himself perfected. A version of himself that was somehow complete and whole, the man he could be. It was gone in a moment, and Renarin pulled his hand free and murmured an apology." End quote. Now, this sounds, as a lot of people pointed out, a lot like Alamantic Gold, Electrum, or even the Malachium. And I have a feeling there's a few options of what's happening here. The first option I have is this is simply how regrowth works. And we've not seen someone being healed by the surge of regrowth from their point of view yet. So when Lift healed some people in Edge Dancer, when she healed Gorks in her interlude, we didn't actually see that from their point of view. Maybe they saw their perfect version of themselves, and it's the kind of the version of themselves that the regrowth is trying to turn them into. It's trying to heal them back to their perfect self, which is kind of how healing works, and it's healing with the capital H in the Cosmere. So, it kind of looks to the spiritual ray, and a person sees themselves as the perfect version of us. It could also be that there's a little bit of illumination working here, which kind of ties into Renarin's visions as well, where it's simply showing Adolin what it's trying to, again, it's showing what it's trying to heal into. It's just that this thing is unique to the Truth Watchers with their illumination and their progression surge. The third option is that People's Perfect Self, People's Perfect Self is just something that Renarin sees, as he said he sees things in Words of Radiance, and this is again just kind of leaking over into Adolin, which is still interesting that he can show people what they could be. And I feel like this is going to play into the role of what a Truth Watcher does for the Knights Radiance. Whatever option it is, I'm still pissed because it completely threw out my theory that I had on Renarin and his future sight abilities, and so I'm going to have to completely start from square one again with that. There's definitely still something strange going on with Renarin. So as I said today, this is a shorter one, which actually no it's not, because I've just noticed that I've been going for like 20 minutes, even though I've only been talking about one chapter. So yeah, I want to do a quick shout outs. Blightsong, or Blightweaver now, suggested a theory about the copycat killer to me, which was that the diagram predicted what Adolin did, and the copycat killer is Taravangian or Taravangian's agents, messing with Adolin somehow, kind of throwing a little wrench in the works, which kind of fits into my column of saw Adolin do it magically and is now messing with him. So Taravangian is now also on that list of the people who could potentially be the copycat killer. I also want to thank Fulminato on the 17th Shard, who pointed out to me that Yakaved Oathgate is definitely in Badenar, as mentioned in Chapter 1 by Dalinar, so thank you very much for that. And thank you everyone else for listening. You can leave a comment down below, or reply to me on Discord, or on the 17th Shard post. I'll see you guys next time, where we can continue walking to Urithiru. Bye!